Every major economy on the planet is running on borrowed money. The United States alone now carries more than $38 trillion in debt, the largest in human history. The European Union sits around $14 trillion. Japan is nearing $9 trillion. Even countries that seem financially unstoppable, like Saudi Arabia with oil wealth, or export giants like Germany and China, are deeply in debt. So here's the uncomfortable question. If every country owes money, who is actually getting paid? Welcome to the world where finance isn't just numbers, it's power, history, and perception. Because once you look closely, you realize something strange. The global economy isn't built on money, it's built on promises. And those promises now total over $315 trillion, nearly 3 times the size of everything the world produces in a year. But here's the twist. The world doesn't really owe money to someone else. It owes it to itself. To understand how we got here, you have to go back, long before apps, banks, or digital payments existed. In 1694, England was locked in war and running out of gold. Instead of surrendering, it tried something new. The government borrowed money from wealthy merchants, promising to pay them interest using future taxes. To manage this system, they created the Bank of England. This changed everything. For the first time, a government could spend money it didn't actually have yet, and investors could trade that promise as if it were money. That promise became something we now call a government bond. And from that moment, debt stopped being a weakness. It became a tool of power. Soon, others copied the model. The Netherlands improved it, France expanded it, and the newly formed United States used it to fund independence and expansion. Borrowing money became a sign of strength, because the ability to borrow meant one thing: people trusted you enough to lend. Fast forward to today, and debt has become the backbone of the global system. The US owes over $38 trillion. Japan is buried under debt larger than its entire economy. And globally, borrowing increases by about $1 trillion every few months. But the real question still remains: who owns all this debt? Let's break it down using the United States. Out of its total debt, roughly half is held by investors, not the government itself. And most of those investors, they're American. Banks, pension funds, insurance companies, even the Federal Reserve. Foreign countries hold only a portion. Japan owns about $1 trillion, China holds around $800 billion. So despite what headlines suggest, the US doesn't owe China in any dominant way. It mostly owes itself. Here's how the loop works. The government issues bonds. Investors buy them. Central banks sometimes buy them back by creating new money. Citizens pay taxes. Those taxes fund interest payments, and those payments go right back into pension funds and savings accounts. It's a financial mirror. Money flows in a circle, never really leaving the system. And this isn't just America. Countries lend to each other constantly. Japan buys US bonds, the US funds global institutions like the International Monetary Fund. Europe finances developing nations through the World Bank. Then developing nations send money back by investing their reserves in Western debt. It's like a global game where everyone is passing around the same IOUs, a chain of promises where every link depends on the next. But there's another layer most people never see. Behind governments are massive financial players: hedge funds, pension systems, sovereign wealth funds. Together, they control tens of trillions of dollars. They decide who gets cheap loans and who faces financial collapse. When they lose confidence in a country, interest rates spike overnight, currencies crash, governments fall. Elections may choose leaders, but markets decide survival. And at the center of it all are central banks. Institutions like the European Central Bank and the Federal Reserve don't just manage money, they create it. When they buy government bonds, they inject new money into the system. That means every dollar, euro, or yen in circulation is tied to debt somewhere else. There is no such thing as debt-free money. Every unit of currency is someone else's liability. For decades, this system has worked on one fragile idea: confidence. As long as investors believe governments will keep paying interest, everything continues smoothly. But when that belief breaks, the consequences are immediate. We saw it during the Greek debt crisis. When Greece couldn't repay its debt, borrowing costs exploded. Rescue came, but at a cost: spending cuts, tax increases, mass unemployment. In Argentina, repeated defaults turned debt into a cycle of instability. In Sri Lanka, economic collapse led to fuel shortages and political chaos. When the system fails, the invisible creditors suddenly become very visible. And yet, even after collapse, the system doesn't end. It resets. New loans replace old ones. Old debt gets restructured. The cycle begins again. Because here's the truth most people never hear. Modern government debt is not designed to be paid off. It's designed to be continued. Governments don't eliminate debt. They refinance it. They issue new bonds to pay off old ones. Debt becomes a permanent feature, like a subscription that never ends. Look at Japan. Its debt is over 250% of its economy, yet borrowing costs remain extremely low. Why? Because investors don't expect repayment, they expect continuation. Government bonds are considered the safest assets in the world. They are used as collateral, savings, and even as a form of money itself. If governments suddenly paid off all their debt, the financial system would actually break. Banks would lose their safest assets, money supply would shrink, deflation would spread. In other words, paying off debt would crash the system. So governments do the opposite. They keep borrowing, not chaotically, but consistently. Debt becomes the heartbeat of the economy. That's why when politicians talk about eliminating national debt, it sounds good, but it's misleading. The real goal isn't to erase debt, it's to manage it, keep it stable, keep it attractive, keep people believing in it. Because once belief disappears, everything else follows. Interest rates rise, markets panic, the system stalls. Here's the deeper reality. When we say we owe it to ourselves, that's only partially true, because the benefits are not shared equally. Interest payments flow upward, from taxpayers and workers to investors and institutions. Debt isn't just global, it's structural. It redistributes wealth quietly. And that's why rising debt often goes hand in hand with rising inequality. Those who own the debt gain, those who service it fall behind. So when you ask who is the world in debt to, the answer isn't simple. It's not just China, not just governments, not just institutions. It's a system, a loop where everyone is connected as both borrower and lender. Debt has evolved. It's no longer just obligation, it's the foundation of the modern economy. But every system has a limit, and if confidence ever breaks, if the chain of promises stops holding, we'll be forced to face what debt really is, a promise that can't last forever. If this changed the way you see money and power, subscribe for more, because history doesn't just explain the world, it reveals where it's heading next.